Good day, everyone. So, welcome to our subject speech and theater arts. So, for today's discussion, we will talk about the listening and speech criticism. So, at the end of the discussion, you will be able to develop skills in effective listening and realize the importance and process of listening. And also, the most important is to apply the skills learned in certain scenarios. So, let us now first define what is effective listening. So, effective listening is actively absorbing the information given to you by a speaker, showing that you are listening and interested and providing feedback to the speaker so that he or she knows the message was received. So, delivering verbal communication like writing a newsletter, improving or involves trying to choose the right words and nonverbal cues to convey a message that will be interpreted in the way that you intend. So, effective listeners show speakers that they have been heard and understood. So, these are the six key active listening skills. So, number one is you pay attention, withhold judgment, reflect, clarify, summarize, and then share. So, the listening process in stage 1, we have the receiving, stage 2, understanding, stage 3, remembering, stage 4, evaluating, and stage 5 is feedback. So let's now first discuss receiving. So receiving is the intentional focus on hearing a speaker's message, which happens when we filter out other sources so that we can isolate the message and avoid confusing mixture of incoming stimuli. So at this stage, we are still only hearing the message. Next is understanding stage. So we attempt to learn the meaning of the message, which is not always easy. For one thing, if a speaker does not enunciate clearly, it may be difficult to tell what the message was. Did your friend say, I think she'll be late for class, or my teacher delayed the class? Next is the remembering stage. So this begins with listening. So if you can't remember something that was said, you might not have been listening effectively. So according to Wolvin and Coakley note that the most common reason for not remembering a message after the fact is because it wasn't really learned in the first place. Next is the evaluating. So this is the fourth stage in the listening process. Evaluating or judging the value of the message. So what we might be thinking this makes sense, or conversely, this is a very odd, because everyone embodies biases and perspectives learned from widely diverse sets of life experiences. Evaluations of the same message can vary widely from one listener to another. Even the most open-minded listeners will have opinions of a speaker, and those opinions will influence how the message is evaluated. Next is the responding or the feedback. So this is sometimes referred to as feedback. So this is the fifth and final stage of the listening process. So it's the stage at which you indicate your involvement. Almost anything you do at this stage can be interpreted as feedback. So we have now here the types of listening. So when we engage in listening, we are doing so for many different reasons depending upon the goals in which we are trying to achieve. So familiarize yourself with these different types of listening so you can strengthen and improve your ability to critically think and evaluate what you have heard. So we have here the appreciative, the emphatic, comprehensive, and the critical. So in appreciative listening, when you listen for appreciation, you are listening for enjoyment. Think about the music you listen to. You usually listen to music because you enjoy it. The same can be said for appreciative listening when someone is speaking. Next is emphatic listening. So when you listen emphatically, You are doing so to show mutual concern. During this type of listening, you are trying to identify with the speaker by understanding the situation in which she is discussing. You are stepping into the other's shoes to get a better understanding of what it is she is talking about. Next is comprehensive listening. If you are watching the news, listening to a lecture, or getting directions from someone, you are listening to understand or listening to comprehend the message that is being sent. This process is actively identifying the structure of the speech and evaluating the supports she offers as evidence. So this is one of the more difficult types of listening because it requires you to not only concentrate but to actively participate in the process. Last is critical listening. So this listening is to evaluate the content of the message. As a critical listener, you are listening to all parts of the message, analyzing it, and evaluating what you heard. When engaging in critical listening, you are also critically thinking. You are making mental judgments based on what you see, hear, and read. Your goal as a critical listener is to evaluate the message that is being sent and decide for yourself if the information is valid. So those are the types of listening. So let us now proceed to active listening. So active listening is a skill that can be acquired and developed with practice. However, active listening can be difficult to master and will therefore take time and patience to develop. So, active listening means, as its name suggests, active listening that is fully concentrating on what is being said rather than just positively hearing the message of the speaker. It also involves listening with all senses as well as giving full attention to the speaker. It is important that the active listener is also seen to be listening. Otherwise, the speaker may conclude that what they are talking about is uninteresting to the listener. Interest can be conveyed to the speaker by using both verbal and nonverbal messages, such as maintaining eye contact, nodding your head, and smiling, agreeing by saying yes or simply to encourage them to continue. By providing this feedback, the person speaking will usually feel more at ease and therefore communicate more easily, openly, and honestly. So, active listening not only means focusing fully on the speaker but also actively showing verbal and nonverbal signs of listening. Generally, speakers want listeners to demonstrate active listening by responding appropriately to what they are saying. Appropriate responses to listening can be both verbal and nonverbal. So, examples of this will be discussed in the following slides. So, these are the signs of active listening. So, we will first discuss the active listening nonverbal, or these are the nonverbal signs of attentive or active listening. So, of course, this is a generic list of the nonverbal signs of listening. In other words, people who are listening are more likely to display at least some of these signs. So, however, these signs may not be appropriate in all situations and across all cultures. Number one is a smile. So, small smiles can be used to show what the listener is paying attention to, what being said, or as a way of agreeing or being happy about the messages being received. So combined with nods of the head, smiles can be powerful in affirming that messages are being listened to and understood. Next is eye contact. It is a normal and usually encouraging for the listener to look at the speaker. So eye contact can, however, be intimidating, especially for more shy speaker. Gauge how much eye contact is appropriate for any given situation. So combine eye contact with smiles and other verbal messages to encourage the speaker. Next is posture. So posture can tell a lot about the sender and receiver in interpersonal interactions. So the attentive listener tends to lean slightly forward or sideways while sitting. Other signs of the active listening may include a slight slant of the head or resting the head on one hand. Next is mirroring. So automatic reflection or mirroring of any facial expressions used by the speaker can be a sign of attentive listening. These reflective expressions can help to show sympathy and empathy in more emotional situations. Attempting to consciously mimic facial expressions, for example, is not automatic reflection of expressions can be sign of inattention. Next is distraction. So the active listener will not be distracted and however will refrain from fidgeting, looking at a clock or watch, doodling, playing with their hair, or picking their fingernails. So those are the signs of active listening under the non-verbal. So let us now proceed to the signs of active listening under the verbal signs or the attentive or active listening. Number one is the positive reinforcement. Although a strong signal of attentiveness, caution should be used when using positive verbal reinforcement. So casual and frequent use of words and phrases such as very good, yes, or indeed can become irritating to the speaker. It is usually better to elaborate and explain why you're agreeing with a certain point. Next is remembering. So the humankind is notoriously bad at remembering details, especially for any length of time. However, remembering a few key points or even the name of the speaker can help to reinforce that the messages sent have been received and understood. So, for example, listening has been successful. Remembering details, ideas, and concepts from previous conversations proves that attention was kept and is likely to encourage the speaker to continue. So during longer exchanges, it may be appropriate to make very brief notes to act as a memory jog when questioning or clarifying later. Next is questioning. The listener can demonstrate that they have been paying attention by asking relevant questions and or making statements that build or help to clarify what the speaker has said. By asking relevant questions, the listener also helps to reinforce that they have an interest in what the speaker has been saying. Next is reflection. So reflecting is closely repeating or paraphrasing what the speaker has said in order to show comprehension. Reflection is a powerful skill that can reinforce the message of the speaker and demonstrate understanding. Next is clarification. So clarifying involves asking questions of the speaker to ensure that the correct message has been received. Clarification usually involves the use of open questions, which enables the speaker to expand on certain points as necessary. Next is summarization. Repeating a summary of what has been said back to the speaker is a technique used by the listener to repeat what has been said in their own words. Summarizing involves taking the main points of the received message and reiterating them in a logical and clear way, giving the speaker a chance to correct if necessary. So those are the signs of active listening under the verbal signs or attentive listening. So of course, in active listening, there is always the barriers to listening. So there are many things that get in the way of listening, and you should be aware of these barriers. So many of which are bad habits. In order to become a more effective listeners, barriers and bad habits to effective listening can include the following. So number one is trying to listen to more than one conversation at a time. So for example, you have two friends and those two friends will tell you stories. So it is very hard to have an attentive or active listening. So number two is you find the communicator attractive or unattractive. So for example, attractive, he or she is very pretty or handsome. Unattractive, her outfit is not comfortable in your eyes, and etc. So you are not interested to their stories or to what they are talking about, not focusing. So this is the most important. Feeling unwell or tired. So for example, someone is telling you stories, but you are very tired from school, from work, or you are not feeling well. Next is identifying rather than empathizing. So you are more on comprehension or comprehending the stories or the topic rather than empathizing the speaker. Next is identifying rather than empathizing, sympathizing rather than empathizing, and you are prejudiced or biased. You have preconceived ideas or bias, and you make judgments. Or number 12 is you have previous experiences, preoccupation, and having a closed mind. So, of course, the nonverbal signs of ineffective listening. Number one is you have lack of eye contact with the speaker. Second one is you have an inappropriate posture. Next is being distracted or inappropriate expression and lack of head nods. So these are the ways or styles on how you improve your listening. So step one is face the speaker and maintain eye contact. Be attentive but relax. Keep an open mind. Listen to the words and try to picture what the speaker is saying. Next is don't interrupt and don't impose your solutions. Let the speaker finish first those the things that he or she wanted to say, and then you can suggest or you can comment after he said those they want to or he or she wanted to communicate. Step 6, wait for the speakers to pause to ask clarifying questions. Ask questions only to ensure understanding and try to feel what the speaker is feeling. Step 9 is give the speaker regular feedback. And step 10, pay attention to what isn't said to nonverbal cues. So these are the tips on how to actively listen to the speaker. So listening with your ears. So these are the how does the other person articulate what he or she says, and etc. Listening with your eyes. Please maintain the eye contact. Look out for the subtle changes, the skin color, and etc. Listening with your heart. It is very important. Identify ways that you can empathize with what is being expressed, and etc. Next is the on how to evaluate a speech. So this is the speech objectives. So knowing the speaker's objective is critical to analyzing the speech and should certainly influence how you study. So number one objective is what is the speaker's goal? Is it to educate, to motivate, or to persuade, or to entertain? Next is what is the primary message being delivered? Next is why is this person delivering this speech? Are they the right person? Next is was the objective achieved? So next is, this is the audience and context for the speech. So a speaker will need to use different techniques to connect with an audience of 1,500 than they would with an audience of 15. Similarly, different techniques will be applied when communicating with teenagers as opposed to communicating with corporate leaders. So number one is, where and when is the speech being delivered? What are the key demographic features of the audience? How large is the audience? Is there an external target audience? So those are the contexts or on how to identify your audiences. Next is the speech content and structure. So the content of the speech should be selected and organized to achieve the primary speech objective. So focus is important. Extraneous information can weaken an otherwise effective argument. So we have here the before speech. So these are the factors you will consider before the speech. Were the other speakers before this one, were their messages similar, opposed, or unrelated? Next is, how was the speaker introduced, or the introduction of speaker, was it appropriate? Did the introduction establish why the audience should listen to this speaker with this topic at this time? And what body language was demonstrated by the speaker as they approach the speaking area? Body language at this moment will often indicate their level of confidence. After the before speech is, we have the speech opening. Due to the primary effect, words, body language, and visuals in the speech opening are all critical to speaking success. Was a hook used effectively to draw the audience into the speech? Or did the speaker open with a dry, "It's a great to be here today"? So I'm so sorry I did not change the speech opening, but after the primary effect is the um is the opening, or the opening of the speech actually draw the audience into this speech, or did the speaker open with a dry? So for example, "It's a great to be here today," and etc. Next is, did the speech open with a story, a joke, a starting statistic, a controversial statement, and a powerful visual? So did the speech opening clearly establish the intent of the presentation, and or was the opening memorable? Next is the speech body. Was the presentation focused? So for example, did all arguments, stories, anecdotes relate back to the primary objective? Next is, were examples or statistics provided to support the arguments? Were the metaphors and symbolism used to improve understanding? And was the speech organized logically? Was it easy to follow? Or did the speaker transition smoothly from one part of the presentation to the next? Next is the speech conclusion. Like the opening, the words, body language, and visual in the speech conclusion are all critical to speaking success. This is due to recency effect. Next is, was the conclusion concise? Was the conclusion memorable? If appropriate, was there call to action? Last topic would be effective speech techniques. So number one is, nervous is normal. So you have to practice and prepare. Next is, know your audience. Your speech is about them and not you. Organize your material in the most effective manner to attain your purpose. Watch for feedback and adapt to it. Let your personality come through. Use humor, Tell stories and use effective language. Don't read unless you have to. Work from an outline. Use your voice and hands effectively. Omit nervous gestures. Grab attention at the beginning and close with a dynamic end, and use audiovisual aids wisely. So that's all for today's discussion. So I hope you understand something. So for your performance activity, the deadline would be on January 14, 2024, 8 o'clock p.m. only. So this is your performance activity. Prepare a speech that talks about your Christmas and New Year celebration. Minimum of 1,000 words. Record yourself by presenting your speech to us. Avoid reading your speech. This consists of 60 points. In the beginning of your recording, kindly state first the following and then send the video in our official group chat. So before your speech, you have to tell your name, your block or your cluster. You have to make the title of your speech and then what is your speech. So that's all for today. So see you in our next topic. God bless everyone.